So, welcome to Learn to Listen. Today, we are joined by LaVonne. Thank you so much for being here. I'm thrilled. We're so excited to come on the podcast today. I thought it'd be great if you would give our audience an intro and tell us all about your story.
Hi guys, I'm LaVonne Idlette. I am an Olympian who is a lawyer by trade. I'm from Hampton, Virginia. I went to college in Hampton, Virginia, which is a hilariously terrible story. But I moved to Miami about 15 years ago, where I sort of officially grew up now. And so I went to graduate school there while training and competing professionally for about 10 years in track and field. I ran the 100-meter hurdles. I went to the 2012 Olympics. And since then, I have been building a practice that helps high achievers invest in commercial real estate to create passive income. And I'm pretty passionate about sharing that with professional athletes specifically because, we get counted out a lot as not being intellectual. So my firm helps people create funds and other assets like debt and like notes. And I've been in real estate for about 15 years by force. Yeah. I'm excited to be here and dive a little bit deeper. Most people know me because I was on the show The Amazing Race that aired season 32, which was 2020. You were home in the pandemic. I hope you watch. If you didn't watch, you should go back and watch. It's a really good season.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so much to dive into. And that's why I was so excited to have you here today. And you said all of that so casually too, which is so incredible. You're like, oh yeah, just like Olympian lawyer, like reality TV star too. I like so casual. I'm like, you're doing so many great things. So you said too, like you're like, oh my terrible story, like going to Hampton in Virginia. So I'm gonna have to just start off there. Can you please explain more?
Yes. So when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to go to college to play sports. I knew it was like the way to go for free. So my high school coach and my college coach are actually married. So he used to come and he would like talk to me every day and tell me how great I was going to be. And what I realized now as an adult is he did the one thing that is really required for you to do business with me, which is you have to build rapport with me that's beyond the transaction. So he built that relationship with me so long that like I took all 5 of my visits to other schools. I hadn't applied to Hampton. That is like down the street. Like I had never even considered it. Like, when you are a pretty well recruited track and field athlete, you're thinking, I want to go to Florida. I want to go to LSU. And he whittled me down. And then he did the one thing that was like the nail in the coffin for me. And it was he signed a girl who beat me at nationals. And I was like, oh, you getting good recruits. I'm coming.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's so funny. Yeah. Like going to school down the street. I can only imagine because I moved halfway across the country, like completely polar opposites. But that's so funny that you bring up like needing to build a rapport, and you kind of learned in that moment that it was like you need to have that rapport before you can have like a more professional or like beyond the transaction. I think that's what you said. That's so interesting that you learned that like before college.
Yes. And that's more of a hindsight thing, but it definitely is exactly how I function in life. Like I do everything with people that I know, like, and trust already. I can teach you skills. It's really hard for me to trust you. So
we love that self-awareness. So then you get recruited, you're a phenomenal athlete. You go to Hampton. So what is it like running track and fields? I know like the hurdles, the 100, is it dash
100-meter hurdles? Yeah.
Hurdles. Okay. You can see how much of a track connoisseur I am, seeing as I was in the rowing world. So completely different. Okay. So the 100-meter hurdles, what was that whole experience like?
Yeah, so in college, I actually wasn't a 100-meter hurdle specialist. I was a heptathlete. So you do the hurdles, the high jump, shot put, 200, long jump, javelin, 800. I also did all of those events open and all 3 jumps and the relays. So basically, I was never sitting down throughout a track meet. I was super fit at the time. Obviously, you can survive at 19 doing that many events. But what I realized was, because I didn't have a specialty in college, I was like pretty good at everything. I wasn't really great at anything. And so when I left college, I moved to Miami to train. And I developed really, really bad tendonitis. So I really couldn't jump as well at the time. And so I was asked, what do you think your best next event is besides jumping? Because I was probably more or less recruited as a jumper because I did the long triple and high jump really well in high school. And then I said, probably hurdles is the next best thing. And so I had this coach who was an Olympic silver medalist at the time named Tony Dees. And he cursed me out every single day and told me I was terrible. And I PR'd by almost a second within a few months. And it was off to the races from them. And I went from being like, oh, you're pretty good, to like, okay, you are an elite hurler and you can compete, which was like a good experience. Good feeling, right? Yeah. Because when you're used to the heptathlon is so much like a congenial sport in track, because we all get along. We're just like, oh, do you need some ice? Do you want a little bit of my snack on the waiting? And it's not the most competitive. Like the way the 100-meter hurdle, the way the 100-meter dash people behave, they're all like, I hate my competitors and I'm not talking to you, and like they're super focused, and we're all like, hey, that's my homegirl, she do the heptathlon too. And to go into an individual event was definitely a transition for me mentally, because I was sort of used to not winning. Like I am I tell people all the time, my claim to fame is I have like the most third places that went to the Olympics ever. So like I wasn't used to winning. I wasn't even necessarily trying to win, because you don't win the heptathlon by winning events. You win the heptathlon by getting great scores in all the events. So you can just focus on yourself, and you're like, oh yeah, you may have beat me in the high jump, but who cares? Like I can throw farther than you in shot put, and I can, so it's a completely different mindset. And yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of a different mindset of where you're in the heptathlon. Like you have like multiple shots at it, kind of like, it's not just like one race, like you're putting all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, that's super interesting. And you said too, like you had kind of like your hands in a lot of different events, obviously. Do you find like you kind of like that? Because I'm kind of like that person where I like to have multiple things going on, just like in any area of my life. Like work, I like to have multiple projects.
Yeah.
Socially, I like to have multiple groups of friends. Like I kind of like to have, my paws in a little bit of different buckets.
That's actually what made me so my focus now professionally is more or less partnering with really good operators of real estate transactions or businesses and bringing a little bit of expertise. But it means that I don't never have the same problem over and over and over. And it's not like one business that has like this cog of repetition. It's more like, oh, this is interesting because this problem is so different than the other problem. And it keeps me engaged, because otherwise I would be completely bored with most things. Because when I started, I was in bankruptcy court, which I thought was actually fine because it's rule-based law. It's great. I loved it. But it's also not competitive either. Everybody's like, okay, so you're not getting anything. So now here's your $2. Here's your $2. Everybody, we can go home and let's go have drinks. Nobody's like adversarial at all. But the funny story about that is I went to college as a biology pre-med major, and I was supposed to be a dermatologist, which I wanted to be since I was 5 years old. And somehow in that transition, part of it being that my dad thinks that he is the brain and I am Pinky, therefore he gives me plan. And so he's a real estate developer, and he was like, you should study business. You can still be a doctor if you want, but everything is a business. If you understand the foundation of business, you will enjoy your life better. I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. But I changed my major a few times, 7 to be exact,
Oh my gosh.
to land in a finance degree. And when I was in the School of Business, there was a professor who had an MBA JD, and he's like, you should go to law school. And I was like, why? And he's like, because you didn't need the curve. And I taught it like law school, which is Socratic method. And I curve everybody's grade. And he's like, so that means you think like a lawyer and you should go and you'll probably do really well. And apparently he was right, because I loved law school. I thought it was great.
That's phenomenal. Wow. That's such a cool way of thinking about it too. Like that you didn't need the curve. And so Socratic method, like it sticks with you and you're able to learn that way. And I mean, like those are the people, right, who like touch your life and change it. You know, they put you on a different path, and that's incredible. And it's so similar that you went into college studying, you said pre-med bio, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I studied neuroscience all through, but I did not, I did not change my major. Except I went in just like general pre-med, and then I tailored it to neuroscience, but now I'm in marketing. So like,
I was about to say, are you a neuroscientist on the low?
Yeah, no, I'm very much not. I figured out this goes back to what we were talking about earlier of, I like to have my hands in a lot of different projects. And so I knew, neuroscience wasn't for me, because you spend, your whole life perfecting or like researching one thing. And so I very much figured out, I was like, oh, I need a little bit more creative outlets than that route would provide me. But we're so similar in that, like, that's so funny that you went in studying biology, and then you came out going to law school, after college.
That's exactly why I'm super active with kids, and I'm always telling them, like, you do not have to know what you want to be when you grow up. That is a fake story. You should try a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
because most things, and the number one reason I say that is because I don't necessarily know that I wanted to be a doctor, because I don't even like touching people, and I never did. But when you're really good at math and science, people push you towards being a doctor, being an engineer, or whatever the case may be. And then they're like, you'll make so much money. And then that becomes your goal, versus like, I actually don't want to touch anybody, actually.
Yeah.
And luckily I had that person give that premonition. But the funny thing about it is, when I got to law school, what I realized is everybody, they stand up and they give their whole like, oh, I was a political science major, blah, blah, blah. And I came to law school because I hate math. And then they all struggle because the law is nothing but word math. And the quicker that people really grasp that and stop trying to be like so fake deep, they would be like, this is awesome. Like, this actually has answers, as opposed to like these like really philosophical answers that don't have answers.
Yeah, I've never heard, like, right when you said practicing law is like word math, I was like, yeah, I get that. I mean, I love one, like and this is also, I know what, like, I don't have anyone in my close life who's a lawyer. So like, this is all coming from crime shows I watch. But like, and I know there's obviously that's romanticized in the media, but it makes a ton of sense of like, oh, you have like input A and B, and like, this is what you'll get is the C.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Oh my gosh. Maybe you're going to convince me to go to law school. Who knows?
You would probably, I'm telling you, science people really like the law school.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'll look into that. But so you had mentioned too, I want to backtrack just a little bit about like when you switched events and you started focusing on the 100-meter hurdle, that you had to like switch your mentality. How did you like go about doing that? Like switching your mindset? Because I feel like this is something I tap into with athletes a lot, is like the control that you have to have over your mind. Like, you really gotta have a strong like mental relationship with yourself. So how did you kind of make that switch?
So I think a lot of that comes down to like environment. So my transition, I actually trained a little bit by myself. So my first year I trained by myself, which was a good transitional time. So I'm really focusing on making myself better. And then I got into a group. That group didn't have any hurdlers. So I was focused on like becoming a better sprinter. Then I moved to a group that had 5 really elite hurdlers, people who had medals, who were all in the top 10. And I had somebody say to me, that I needed to stop running in the pack and ranking and filing myself, which is something that you do when you are not super competitive. You're just like, as long as I don't get last, I'm in the mix, you know,
Yeah.
I look terrible. And they were like, you are good enough to compete to win. You need to do that every day though. And so that little spark made me every single day come to practice with the mindset that like, I wanted to win the rep, or I wanted to be ahead in the workout, or I wanted to add more weight than everybody else in the weight room. Every single thing is sort of like a little deposit in a bank. And then like at the end of the season, you have that like, you reach your goal because you put enough money in it.
Yeah, right.
And so I looked at it from a pragmatic standpoint, because I am super more of a nerd than I am an athlete. I just happen to be faster than other people. So you have to explain things to me in a very like, okay, so if you push off the blocks with this much power, you should hit this step, this step, this step, this step, and you should be at the hurdle in the right time. Like you don't actually have to think about it, but this all should work out because science makes sense. And a lot of times I would get into it with my coach, because my coach sort of had this like, he was so used to dealing with what I call brute dummies. He's just like, I'm gonna throw it and you run and you hit him, and it's like, no, I can't do it. You're gonna have to tell me what what I have to think about on the way. And so the becoming competitive was more about me, which was, if you focused on individual aspects of making yourself better, you will compete better. And it never had anything to do with anybody else, because at the end of the day, track is really an individual sport, and everybody can be great because you're going to be in your own lane and no one is going to like, I mean, sometimes people touch you and that's crazy, but in general, you will, like, everybody can be great. Everybody can still have a great race, and you wouldn't even know, because you're not really competing against them. You're competing for the time. And if you run fast enough, you'll beat them.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So who was it that like kind of gave you that advice that like you're good enough to compete, but you have to be competing every day? Was that a coach?
No, it was, so I had this like amazing group. And so one is Kelly Wells. She and I did the Amazing Race together. She and I went to college together, and we trained for the Olympics together. So one is her. And so she every day is just telling me like, you're going to be fine. Just ride the course, right? And then, yes. And then the other person was 3 or 4 different sprinters that trained with me, and they're like, so we train together, but we don't really train together. I don't run the 100. And they would just say like, you know, you're strong, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like anything you can win, you should be winning. Like don't get behind. So it was a very powerful group, because that was when I truly learned that like iron sharpens iron, and it makes you so much better. Like you don't want to necessarily, people typically gravitate towards a place where they can be like a big fish in a small pond, as opposed to like, no, you're going to have to go out here. Everybody is the same size fish, and you're going to have to compete with them. And the only way to be better is to help each other be better, because if you let them lack, you'll start lacking. So now every day you're like, oh no, fix your arm, fix this, fix that. And it's not, there's no like hater in it. It's more like, I want you to be better, because that's going to force me to be even better, to continue to compete. Otherwise we'll just sit here all in stagnation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Like, I think you nailed it right on the head of like, most people I feel like do want to be, especially in athletics, like the big fish in the big pond. They want to be the one who is like the shining star, right? And so it's so cool that you had a group where it was that mentality of like, there's enough light for everybody. Like you could pull other people up, and that actually helps you, rather than, you know, like you don't want to surround yourself by people who are not going to do, you know, the same for you. And like Brene Brown has this reference of like, she tells her daughters, you need to like hold on to your light. And if you have like candle blower outers, I think that's the term she uses, but like someone who sees that you're glowing and you're shining and tries to put out that light, then like they're not your true friends. And so it sounds like this group that you had, of Kelly and the other like 100-meter runners, that they were just able to like bring you up so much. And that's so powerful. Cause like, to me, I'm the one, like a relationship or a teammate, like a close bond will motivate me to like push myself farther. And it sounds like you also had that as well.
That is such a big, oh my gosh. So I never liked working out. So
oh my God, same.
I like to compete. I don't like to work out. So
Same.
besides like lifting weights, so we would go and we would run these workouts. And so my coach had the one type of workout that would make a person like me really try, which is, if I don't make the time, then everybody has to run again. And I don't want nobody to have to be punished because of me. So it made me be better, faster, because I'm just like, there we go, they go me. I know, you know.
Like you're not gonna do an extra workout because of me. Like, I'll be damned.
Yeah. And so like all of that had such a profound impact on me. And as a matter of fact, one of the things you just said is a part of what made me start working with athletes, specifically when I was actually still competing. So from about 2012, I started working with the first like NBA guys, and a lot of it was they're completely used to being the biggest fish in their pond. They're the richest person they know. Everybody needs me. Everybody wants me. Blah blah blah. Everybody's gonna use me, and I'm just like, okay. So I intentionally started taking them to conferences and to spaces where they were not even close to being the richest person. And
I love that.
The people were not sports fans, which was even better because it was the first time, and you could see it click in their head. And it's almost an ego grab because it's sort of like, what do you mean you don't know who I am?
Yeah.
And
excuse me.
and what do you mean you don't care about that? It's like, what do you mean you don't watch? Like, it's so confusing to them because everything in their world has been around them. Like, I am the center of the universe and my sport is the center of the universe. And if you don't know, then you are like, but for them to see and meet people who were just business people who were relaxed and themselves and not trying to please nobody. Like, my outfit doesn't match, don't care, not going to do it. If you want to hang out with me, you're going to have to pay your own way. Literally the thoughts that I see a lot of young athletes deal with, which is just like a million leeches and all that kind of stuff. And they're just completely like, I wish I could be as free as that guy. Like, that guy's shoes don't match. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
You know, there were no extra people at the meeting that added no value. And so just those sorts of epiphanies were like the building blocks of what I do now with them, which is more or less helping them find partnerships with people who are doing really well, who don't necessarily need their money, but would love to have their participation.
Okay. Yeah. I want to dive into this more. Like, so, and I loved that you said, like, when you put a big fish in an even bigger pond, like it really shifts their perspective. And like, I love that you kind of mentioned, it's like kind of like an ego grab that you like start off with on that foot. And you're like, okay, this is how you start to transition away from sport. Like, I imagine a lot of the pro athletes that you're working with, like they're getting to that point where they're now exiting their athletic career and they're now turning to other parts of the world. And they're like, oh, all I've known has been athletics. Right. So then it's like seeing this other side of like business and people with like mismatching shoes, their outfits. They're like, this is so foreign to me. So I'm sure they love to have someone who like you, who's guiding them through that process and being like, no, like you're going to have to change how things work around here a bit. But yeah, so like walk me through, I can already see kind of like why you started just being like relationship first and wanting to help athletes make that transition. But how did you like kind of go about like finding people to work with, like clients? And I know like turning those people that you knew into what you now do today.
Yeah. So basically, it started off as like, these are just my friends, and they're being invited to these, we'll call them deal of a lifetime meetings, like
Yeah.
and I'm just like, it's not how deal of a lifetime work, but I'm gonna let you cook. So I would go, they would say, come on, can you come with me to a VC meeting, or someone wants an investment of some sort, or it could be somebody in their family saying, invest in this with me and we're gonna make so much money, it's gonna be great. And I would basically the entire business model was around saying no. I would show up and I would listen and I would translate, and then I would give my rationale, because it's more objective. Like, I'm actually not saying no, I'm going to tell you why you're going to say no, because none of this stuff maths out, it doesn't make any sense. But I had a series of things happen in my life that sort of brung this like client base, if that makes sense. So when I first got to South Florida, I coached at a school called St. Thomas Aquinas. 9 of my kids went to the NFL. Then after that, I was dating a guy who played basketball and helping him with some stuff. And when you help any athlete, like, athletes listen to each other more.
Hell yeah, they do.
So I'm like, you guys are sitting in the locker room all telling lies about things you do not do. And
tell like it is.
And yes, I can help you. But that transition made me realize that, like, everything sounds good. Everybody wants to do all things. They all have all FOMO because they've listened, and LeBron James is doing a million things, and, you know, this person is investing in this, and like, so they're like, I need deals, I need to be doing more, blah, 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 I'm gonna go broke. And I'm like, you'll go broke faster investing in things you don't understand than riding the wave. But also, at the end of the day, I think that you should get your feet wet, because you cannot learn to swim by reading books. So I want you to so I started getting them involved in things, but with no risk, which is like, instead of asking for more cash, we're going to ask for equity to do XYZ sort of deal. So now you can get the swim on the go, no risk, you're learning. And then we can discuss different terms and stuff like that, because the worst thing that typically happens is, because someone, when they were in the 7th grade, told them that they were not going to be smart because they were athletes, and to let them handle it, they sort of have been cowering behind asking questions make you stupid, and you should already understand things. So they won't ask questions, and then like will make assumptions. And so I'm the person like, nope, that don't make no sense. Explain. And it takes a lot of the pressure off of going to these meetings with people who they assume are smarter than them, typically are not. And, you know, having those conversations. We did this, I forget when this was, probably like 6 or 7 years ago. And it was like it was an exercise where you brung CEOs, C-suite executives with athletes, you switch books. So basically the athletes all got 10K reports on the companies, and the C-suite guys all got playbooks. Nobody knows what's happening, okay? Because you're speaking different languages, and, you know, but it was them seeing that to understand that everything has its own language. Everything has a learning curve. You will not be the greatest person on your first day. You have to kind of give yourself grace to learn. I happened to be forced into real estate, so I knew more going into college and stuff than most people. But at the end of the day, I took my lumps like everybody else. You know, I've definitely lost money, invested with crazy people who, you know, could probably still get beat up if I saw them anywhere. You know, but I also, because I've always been around sort of like the intellectual athlete types, I've never really taken myself that serious. Like, you know, I allow myself to be wrong, look things up, all of that kind of stuff. And it's a growing process.
Yeah, well, that's a blessing that you can allow yourself to be wrong. Like I think that's one of the things that, at least it sounds like, that with the clients that you work with, you can get so caught up in that image, like you were saying, of like, I don't want to be the one in the room who doesn't know what's going on. So
Yeah.
instead, you'll just like fall to ignorance, but that can really hurt you in the long run. Obviously, if you don't know about what you're doing, about investing in, like in the business world. And so I love that you have that like practice or program, and that you're that person in the room who's kind of like taking off that pressure of being like, I don't care, like I'll ask the questions,
Yeah.
like I don't care if I sound dumb, or like if they think I'm stupid, whatever. Like you're actually being the smart one for being proactive about it, and thus asking the questions that like need to be asked, or like so you understand what you're getting yourself into. And I wanted to ask, like, because you've brought it up twice now, and I've seen this like in either myself, like my own worries, or athletes that I met in college, in that like the perception that if you're in athletics, you can't also be intelligent, or that you're like lesser so.
Yeah.
And I saw this a lot with athletics. Like I was always nervous if someone like from high school would be like, oh my God, you got into Notre Dame, like you're only going there because of your like athletics, like your scholarship. And I was like, okay, no, like I actually think I'm pretty intelligent, but like you're always worried about it, right? Like you're worried that there's the like the athlete privilege of someone saying like, you only got into this college because of that. You're only like, you're a professional athlete, you can't understand like the business side of things. So I love that you're one, proving that stereotype wrong, but then also helping other athletes to like reverse that like mental, or like that self-awareness, that self-perception of like, no, you can be the smartest in the room. Like you're one of the top players in your sport, so like you're the smartest in that area, but
Mm-hmm.
it's going to take some, like you have to have training wheels, and you have to obviously take time to gather that like intelligence for the new area, like investments that you're looking into.
Right. Exactly. It's literally like, I remember being undergrad and having a teacher be like, "Oh, I'm so surprised you turned in all your homework." Like, it's kind of stupid comment is that?
Yeah.
Or that you answered the question and you really knew what was happening. I'm like, I mean, I have no expectations for your expectations. However, I intend to be smarter. I don't want to just come here and pass time. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's such a it's a terrible disservice to allow grown people to believe that they are not smart enough to make their own decisions, especially over time. It's sort of like, you will start off as a novice, and most people are not teaching you things because they're trying to keep a control over you to a point. But that's, again, not iron is sharpening iron. That's low level, low self-esteem stuff, where like I've definitely had, and I'm not going to say a lot of agents dislike me, but there are a few, because the more information that I give, the more they become fearful that the player won't need them. And I'm like, you have a job, a very specific job. Maybe you don't know what the job is, but it's not what I do, and it's not what I'm teaching them to do. You negotiate contracts, do that. It's no one is threatening your job. You feel threatened. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's all about like power, right? Like the more,
Yeah.
and it's such a shame, because I think it happens a lot in the athletic community, is like who holds the power, like whether or not it's like competitor versus competitor, like competing athletes, or like the relationships with like coaches and players, or agents and players. Like
Yeah.
they're like, it equates to the more knowledge you have, the less power you have over someone, which is like such a messed up way of thinking and like operating. Because
Right.
it, in an ideal world, like the agents that you spoke to, if like they should be confident enough that they're providing enough value that they wouldn't go anywhere if their player is learning more about investments through you, like they shouldn't be as worried.
It's because most people, and this is it's terrible. Most people don't actually know what agents do. So not and agents tend to be like the center of an athlete's universe. So if you need something, you call me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start calling other people besides me, I feel, away. And I'm like, why would you want to be called for things that you don't do? That is ridiculous. But hey, whatever. I try to make people as comfortable as possible because I'm really not competing with anybody. I'm like, I didn't even start having athletes invest with me or doing things with me in a partnership for years because I was always like, I don't even want to be confused that my purpose of being here is to get money from you guys. It's more or less to educate you to do your own thing. And I remember what I was thinking earlier when I said, you have to listen, but then you have to guide, because everybody wants the shiny thing. So when I first got into this, they're like, oh, I want to start a Chick-fil-A. I want a trucking company. I want to buy this. I want to do this, whatever. And can you help me do that? And so I would put together the people, the team, the plan, make it work. Everything is fun while it's Instagrammable. And then it becomes a business. It becomes work. It becomes a thing. And then they realize it's not what they want to do, so now I'm like, okay, we don't become high achievers at a thing to get a new job. Like, that's not a thing. We don't want to do that. Maybe 4 out of 100 will want to actually be an active investor who starts a new business that they have to be involved in. Everybody else just wants to make sure that they are creating enough revenue or enough capital that they can sustain the lifestyle. Mm-hmm. That's it. And so I stopped listening to them. Like, no, you don't want to do that. There'll be no restaurants. There'll be no car washes. There'll be no barbershops. None of it. You don't want to do that. But I'm not saying no specifically. It's just more like, let's look at the numbers and the time. Yeah. And then I'm going to let you realize you don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. Because most things don't give the returns that people make it seem like on the internet. So that becomes me leading them down a path for them to discover what they actually want to get into, whether that is investing in venture. There are a lot of really, really good people now involved in like helping athletes learn about venture. But as of probably 3 years ago, I stopped saying I help athletes. I say I help high achievers, because what I realize is it's not an athlete problem. It is a specialized knowledge problem. So I have a whole bunch of clients who are doctors who, if not for having conversations with me, would say, I have a financial advisor. The financial advisor is doing something. I'm making some returns and I'm hoping for the best. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's look at the quarterly statements. And he's like, you paid a 2% fee and you lost 10%. You could do that by yourself.
Yeah. I'm sure they love hearing that. Yeah, you're a high achieving clientele. Yeah.
And that's such a not like a lot of financial advisors think I don't like them, but I'm like, it's not that. I am a person who holds you accountable. I think that everything has buckets. All your money shouldn't be in real estate. All your money shouldn't be in Bitcoin. All your money shouldn't be in anything. Mm-mm. There are buckets. And so when we talk about an allocation for something that creates cash flow, that has that can help you sustain your lifestyle and also give you some deductibility, which is why I'm very into real estate. But other than that, there should be diversification, and you probably shouldn't do it all, but you should know what's happening, because at the end of the day, no one cares about you more than you care about you, and they're going to get their fees regardless.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting. And thank you for like sharing all of that. Like, I am not a investments connoisseur, very knowledgeable about it, but like, what would you, so like taking all of that advice of like what you've seen through like working with multiple clients, are there typical like trends that you like see across like no matter what industry the client is in, and like how do you think like those trends, like how would you advise like other people to go about like changing their like knowledge or perception about investing?
The general trend, I guess I would say, is the people who listen to me most have been burnt at least once.
Mm.
And they typically have pretty much given up, if that makes sense. So they have like way too much money in a checking account or a savings account. And then they're just like, everybody's trying to get over on me. I don't trust anything or anybody. And excuse me, I would rather just take my 0.002% that the bank gives me, and at least I'll have peace of mind. Obviously, we know that inflation sucks, and that's not a winning formula over time, especially because you're also spending money. So that means that the balance is just getting smaller and smaller. And so I am a person who just believes in meeting people where they are and what they want to do, and then having conversations around that and building backwards. So, and for the most part, so it's much easier for me to work with athletes on this because I help them use their influence to get into investments with no money. So, your hometown, there's always a booster or somebody who's doing something, and you're like, all right, we're going to meet them. And they're usually like, it's a stranger. And I'm like, they know who you are. It's okay. We're going to go. And the same with a college town, the same with a team where they played. You can get a little bit of favor in those markets, and it's a good way to get them in. When it comes to other investors, which is, I would say, more of my sweet spot now, because I have access to all kinds of operators. I spend time building relationships with great operators so that, when they're raising money, they typically don't need any money. You want your money to go with the people who don't need any money, and give them access without having to like be overly exposed. So the types of people who are really, really good operators, they'll have like $1 million minimum to invest with them or something crazy. And so I then will aggregate for them the doctors and lawyers and young engineers and all that, crypto babies and e-com kids, everybody, $10,000, $20,000 allocation, something that's more bite-sized for them to get in and learn. But we bring them the $1 million check, and then they are able to participate, get the returns, learn on the go without the risk exposure, and then say, okay, wow, okay, the general public will never have access to any of these investments because they're meant to be exclusively for the 1%'s 1%. And so that's the sweet spot of what we offer now.
Yeah, no, that's super powerful. And this kind of like popped into mind when you were just like talking, and it just like your confidence and like just the knowledge, like the skill set that you offer, like it's very apparent to me. And so what popped in my mind, just like a lover of psychology, is like, have you ever gotten like pushback for being so like knowledgeable or confident in the space? Like I imagine you're dealing with a lot of like high professional like clientele, like who maybe, I'm hoping, wouldn't like ever disrespect you, but and if you're not comfortable to share, please don't, but it just popped into my mind, so I have to ask it.
So I actually haven't, which is,
amazing.
I get asked because I do a lot of like panels, especially about women in business and minorities in business and blah, 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 blah. And people ask me that kind of stuff all the time. And I'm like, maybe it's just my personality that like, I don't really get, so, and this goes for my entire family as well. I really don't give people like a lot of rope to do too much towards me. Like, I'm not really asking for that much advice. I'm really not, like, if we're having dialogue and you want to give your 2 cents, that's fine. But like the whole, you're too strong and you're too this and you're too that conversation, we're not having it. So
yeah, you'll just like cut it off.
Yeah, because I don't give it. I don't allow anybody to bring that kind of energy to my space. I've never had any real pushback. I definitely fire clients for being rude. I fire clients for being rude to other people. So
Awesome.
that a part of and I take that from sports as well. It's like a part of just like knowing who you are is knowing who you aren't and what you're not going to deal with.
Hell yeah.
And so I definitely know that there are some people who I probably rub the wrong way because I'm just not a ring kisser. So we can either do business or we don't have to. There's like a million other people in the world.
Yeah.
And you can skip me and those opinions. And it used to be hilarious to me because I do meet a lot of guys, and they'll say things like, wow, I've never dated an equal, or I've never like it would be so hard to date you, blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't know who the heck invited you to date me because I didn't.
Yeah.
And like, you can keep these opinions, like I don't care.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, I can only imagine. I mean, like, but if and when I would ever get that, I would just be like, okay, cool. Like, I'm moving on.
Right.
Like, I don't want to hear it. Yeah.
And the worst thing is, and the best thing that you can ever have is the confidence of a middle-aged man. So people say like, that's how you act already. And so like, because yeah, I'm just like, you guys volunteer what you like and all of that. No one cares. No one cares. And the fact that like you feel like that opinion should hold weight with someone else's behavior is crazy to me. So yeah. I'm usually like, congratulations. Who told you that we were equal just because you're a man with a job? It's very weird.
Yeah, no, that's you're a great role model. I mean, for women though, seriously, like I think if you can just have that mentality of like, it's not even a question, like we're not even having this discussion of that, like we are equals, but I don't need your approval that we're equals. I think that's what it comes down to. And that's like so incredibly powerful and healthy, just like having that self-perception and awareness of like, I know who I am. I'm confident in who I am. I don't need you to like verify that or like approve of my personality, you know?
Yeah. My parents like me. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And so now like I'm pregnant and I'm walking around and people are like, oh, are you okay? And I'm like,
are you okay? Well, congrats on being pregnant too. That's incredible. Oh my gosh, you're glowing. It's funny transition, but I do want to talk to you too about being on The Amazing Race, because we haven't even touched upon that, but like the inside perspective that you have, I'm so curious about, like, one, were you a fan of the show like growing up? Like what really motivated you to go on the show?
No, I had never even seen the show.
Oh, that's even better.
The funniest things happen in your life. Like, so I have always been if an opportunity presents itself, say yes and figure it out, Mark Cuban style. So cool. At the time, 2017, I was a partner in a PR firm with my cousin, who is a publicist. And we had a bunch of contracts and stuff with Viacom and some other shows where we have reality TV stars as clients. Hated the business. Terrible people. Okay, they're not terrible people, but they are the least humble group ever. Okay. Like, you're like,
I can imagine.
You're on TV for no reason whatsoever, and you are not relaxing in any way. Didn't like it. But in that time frame, so my picture is on this, in the roster of people, I'm in there because at the time I'm still competing. And, track and field is very much a sponsor-based sport. So you want to always have your name out or whatever so that you can get more sponsors. So you won't be poor, spending all that money on coaches and massages and whatnot. Yeah. And so we got a call from CBS about being on Survivor. Now, Anybody who knows me knows that I am not a survivor. I don't be outside. I just work out. I come in the house. I am a nerd. I don't know how to make no fire. I don't know how to do anything. So I'm just like, it's going to be a hard no for me on Survivor. I'm not a survivor. Me and Beyonce. And so then they're like, oh, we also produce a show called The Amazing Race. Would you be interested? And I'm like, oh, I've heard of it. Sure. I would be interested in doing that. So we sort of get fast tracked through the scenario. They asked me who I wanted to do it with. I had a boyfriend at the time, and they were like, nope, he sounds boring. And so I'm like, oh, well, I have a teammate. Like, she and I, we were high school rivals. We were college teammates. We trained for the Olympics together. I lived at her house because her husband plays football, and she had postpartum depression during camp. So I'm like, it's good. And they love it because apparently The Amazing Race is a relationship show. Who knew? I didn't know that.
Wow. Okay.
It's about how people deal with pressure in relationships. And so we literally have the same personality expressed differently. So I am very, very laid back. Like, it takes so much for you to like raise my temperature and make me act a different way. I'm not going to raise my voice ever. I literally always talk like this, no matter what's going on. And she is like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Oh my God. Like,
yeah.
Same scenarios, but it helps her process. I process better by being relaxed. And so while we're going through the application process, they're loving this. And the funniest thing about it is we go to CBS, and this is like finals. They have a bunch of different, groups there. And they kept saying, you guys need to touch each other more. And I'm like, I've known her for 20 years and I've touched her more in this room than my whole life. I'm all set. I am not a toucher. We're going back to this. I'm not a toucher. COVID was the best thing to happen to me because I didn't have to touch people anymore. Culturally, I'm supposed to walk in the room and kiss people on the cheek and hug and da. Yeah. Nope, way from the door. I hope everybody's having a great day.
You're like, we're the friends that hug like once in 20 years. Like,
exactly.
That's it.
And so when it's all said and done, I asked her initially, like, would you do it? No, I asked her, would her husband let her do it? And she's like, I'm doing it. And so we leave her baby, who was only 3 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And we go off and run around the world, which was a great time for us because before that I had lived at her house and I hadn't really seen it. So we now had this like time where we have no communication with the outside world, and we just spend time together, having a great time, running around. And it was really hardest thing I've ever done. But I think it was much harder because I had retired already and I hadn't really worked out. Like, I was working out, but it wasn't like with a purpose. So I wasn't in super great shape. And so every single thing we did, which required fast running, takes you out, especially because even though I'm pretty fast, pretty strong, I've never ran with a big backpack on. Why would I do that?
Yeah. So. You're like, I'm in track. Come on.
And it's a 20-pound backpack because I'm an over preparer. I have like jumbo sunflower seeds and like a light for my head just in case we're someplace in the dark. Like all these things that, I watch YouTube because once we got casted, it was months before we actually left. I started watching the show, watching YouTube. What should I pack? All that. Fold my clothes, put it in this humongous sack thing that has a bladder for you to drink water. I'm really turning into like a hiker at this point. And it was really hard, really, really hard. And so since then, we were voted a fan favorite. Like we got out early because we got cheated. And then with the bad taxi, and then we got invited back, asking if we would want to do like an all-star. And I'm just like, absolutely not.
I love that you're so casual. You're like, I'm turning down the Amazing Race. Like it was great one time, but like I do not need to do it again. What like made it
No. Have you ever been with 50 people having babies?
No. That'd be crazy. Yeah, I can only imagine. So like I know like the physicality of it, obviously, like you just said, running around with a 20-pound backpack. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. But like what like also made it like the hardest thing that you've ever had to do? Like, was it like just the mentality of it, of like, it's just you and your friend? I believe her name is Kelly, correct?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like just you and Kelly, like you two alone versus like all these other like external factors.
It's partially the physical part, but it's also the mental part. We're running around, no bath. It's like 3 or 4 days, no bath, no hotel. We slept in a cave. We slept in the airport. It was freaking freezing. We're flying between places. Everybody stinks. There is no real food happening. It's sort of like, you got snacks in your bag. We'll stop, we'll eat something. And so and this is also a terrible part about like, we have lived a bougie life. I fly business class and eat meals on flights and go straight to hotels and eat again. Like my entire way of like, I've been all around the world at this point for track, but the experience is very luxurious. It's not like, are we in a cave? Is that a cave dog? And the people were playing with the cave dog. I'm just like, this is disgusting. So yeah, mentally, you're just over it. Like, I'm tired. I would love to take a bath, lay down, have a nice meal.
Yeah. Okay, so it's like that mental toughness of like, oh my God, my whole world is like so different from this current reality of like, you're like, how do we get back?
Off in LA when we flew to Trinidad, which is really far, by the way. So it's a 9-hour flight. Then when you get there, just get off the plane and they have you running down the street, pushing the heaviest barrel of oil ever in the middle of the street with regular cars who are not a part of this show. And then the next day, so then that happens at night. You get your plane ticket. We fly to Tobago. In Tobago, we got to run out of the airport and they have us on this boat, and the boat is trying to get to an area, and the guy, so these people don't work for the show. They're just captains of boats. And we're like, get us there as fast as possible. When I tell you the boat is jumping like this, boom, boom, boom. Mind you, I learned to swim for the show. I did not know how to swim before that. So boat's jumping. I'm laying down flat, praying that we don't get thrown out of this boat because we're in open water in Tobago.
What would you even do? I would just You're just like actually trying to survive. Like you're like gripping the rails.
Yeah. I'm just like, this is so stressful and dangerous in real life. Like, because in my mind, I'm like, reality show, these are gonna be people who work for the show. They're not gonna let you get hurt. These people don't know these people. Yeah, they're just a captain on the boat. Like they're just sitting there, and this is what they do in the afternoon. They ride out people to go fishing on a fast boat.
You're like, I'm trying to survive.
I just want to survive. My parents expect me to be back home, So
yeah.
But overall, I would say the best part about the show for me was that we got to meet 10 other groups of people who we would have never met. Kelly already knew D'Angelo and Gary because her husband's twin played on the team with D'Angelo.
Whoa,
but other than that, we would have never met any of those people in our lives. And they are some of our closest friends now. We've been in there. She officiated Will and James' wedding.
That's That's so cute. Oh my gosh. I love
Yes,
that.
we've all been on trips together since then because we had to keep the secret for 2 years. So that already was like our bonding point because there was nobody else we could talk to about it for 2 years before it aired. We
Okay.
literally became like fast friends with these people from all walks of life.
Yeah. So
Like,
so you like it sounds like you still like keep in touch with these people. Obviously,
yes.
like your close-knit friend group, yes, you still have because you had that before the show. But that's so incredible. I mean, like also props to you for like just taking an opportunity and being like, hell yeah, let's give it a shot. I mean, you definitely learned, like you said when they invited you back on, you're like, nope, I tried it and I know I did not want to do it again.
Yeah. I actually like, I don't know. I don't aspire to be a famous person though. So like the whole just being on TV over and over, because that's a thing now. You can just go from
Mm.
show to show to show. Sort of like when I was a kid, that show was Real World, and I actually tried out to be on that show. But what I realized, I made it to the finals, and what I realized is I am not eccentric enough to be on a show that's only about personality.
Mm.
Like I'm telling you, I just relax. I don't raise my voice. I'm, whatever.
Yeah, you're not
And
like dramatic. Yeah.
yeah, they're looking for someone that's going to give them
The
some drama,
reality TV show
you
that
know?
they need.
And I'm like,
Yes.
yes, if someone talks to me like that, I'm going to close my door.
Yeah, you're like, you're not getting anything out of me.
I have nothing.
Nothing juicy. You're like, okay, cool. Oh my
No, because I
gosh.
don't believe in arguing with strangers. Like for what?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a waste of effort, right? Time and effort. And
Yes.
energy too. Well, this has been so phenomenal. I am so thrilled. You're just like so cool, so awesome. So I'm so glad that I've gotten to speak with you. We've had like such a wonderful conversation. I just looked at the time and I was like, oh my gosh. So I have like one final question for you, and then I promise I'll stop just wanting to hear everything about you. But so like what would you say, like wrapping it up with Learn to Listen, all about like mental health, self-awareness, self-perception, and trying to make your mindset like the strongest, the best it can be. And so in your own words, how do you think like being like financially knowledgeable and stable and like confident in that area of your life really helps your mindset and like mental health and mental fortitude? Like how do you think that helps propel like your clients and yourself into that like next stage of their life?
Okay. So in general, I would say that financial fitness, or like that freedom of knowing that you have your ducks in a row, blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
takes that worry away, which allows you to sort of focus more on who you really want to be for the world, and for yourself. So I think that the stronger you are financially, and that number looks different for everybody depending on like what kind of life you really want to have, but like it definitely has the ability to let you relax enough to figure out exactly how you want to spend your time.
Mm-hmm.
Most people spend their time where they have to because they have to pay their bills, and
Right.
but once you can get a little ahead of that, then you'll have that like cushion, which I call peace of mind, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
that peace of mind changes everything about your life and your lifestyle, because then you can say, all right, okay, so I really like babies. I want to hug babies every day, and that's how I want to spend most of my time, as opposed to like, you could love babies all you want, but if you have to work all day and you have to do all of these other things just to stay afloat, especially in the world right now where like rent's ridiculous, everything costs too many dollars, dinner is the
Mm-hmm.
most expensive it's ever been in your life, you begin to have these like, everything is pressure, and it adds and adds and adds and adds, and that all takes a toll on your mental health because you never have a chance to like just be present. And for me, being present is more important than anything. Like, one of the biggest reasons why I never necessarily wanted to be famous was because I literally just like living in my present moment with the people I already like.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to share it with anybody extra unless I decide to. Knowing like the people that I work with tend to be really famous, and the stress that it takes to not get the scrutiny of the media or whomever because you didn't want someone to touch you while you was eating your dinner, or to have to sign every autograph while you walked into a hotel, is freeing.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as people want to be reality stars and Instagram gurus and all that, just realize that everything you ask for comes with something else.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be something that you want. So financial freedom helps you decide what you want your life to be like every day, and you get to choose. So I think it's important to spend a little bit of time, especially your young life when you don't have any real responsibilities. You can, hustle around a little bit to get that together. And then you'll enjoy, like, my young life has been great. This is why I am just now having my first baby. I'm 36, and people are like, man, you waited a long time. I'm like, yes, because at some point when I was younger, it was like, hey, it's Friday, guys. You want to go to the Maldives?
Yeah. And you're like, why would you change? Why would you change that?
Yes, because you have to be prepared for that not to be your reality, and or not just be a selfish person who just drags your kids all over the place all the time because that's the life that you want. Sort of giving them a little bit of balance. I definitely grew up in like a household with a neighborhood and all that, so I appreciate that, but also the freedom to say like, okay, maybe we don't want to go to traditional school. I don't know, just depends. And so having the flexibility to decide that is also freeing for me, because I don't really have to worry. I'm telling you, I don't like strangers. So, the dropping your baby off at the daycare. We had an issue in Florida recently where they left a 2-year-old baby in daycare, like cut the lights off, locked her in there. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's terrifying.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the part that you said about like being able to have time to figure out who you want to be, that is not terrifying. And I love that you said that. It's in fact beautiful. And I was speaking with one of my friends actually who's an entrepreneur. He wants to own his own company someday, and he said he was like, being smart about it will like let me buy back my time and enjoy my life. And he said that, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And so that goes exactly along with what you were saying with like financial fitness and being free, in that like you can choose what to do with your everyday life. You don't have to be like a workhorse 24/7 unless you want to be. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful note to end on, in that like I really agree with that. And I think even just now starting out my professional career, it's like I now have that lens of like, how can I be working towards the future that I want with the like current reality I have. And so it's fun like figuring it all out, but it's all a new world to me.
Yes. And don't put too much pressure on yourself about it.
Yeah.
Just day by day, you'll figure it out. It's not that deep.
Not that deep. I love it. I'll take that with me. Out of this like hour, like 20-minute conversation or something, I'm like, not that deep. Anything. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, okay. This has been so phenomenal. I'm so happy. We got to just chat and get to know each other better, LaVonne. And I know like this conversation, I think it's really going to resonate with our listeners. So I'm super excited to get it out there.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.